Hello and welcome. I'm Omar Salem and this is the Product.Live. Today I have a very special guest for me. He is the first one that got me hosted on a podcast, and that's how I got hooked to the podcast world. But also, I think he is one of the best product voices out there. He is a very experienced product leader. We have with us Randy Silver, the Chief Product Officers of Owls. Sorry, welcome, Randy.
Thank you, Omar. So we had you as a guest. We made it look so easy, and you decided to start your own podcast.
Yeah, like I really liked it, man. And the discussion with you and Lily was amazing. And I was like, I started having this itch of, yeah, I want to do this again. I want to do this again. so,
Fantastic.
yeah, you got me hooked to this. So what we're going to talk about today, I remember, first when I reached out to you, you were about to deliver this great talk and mind the product about how do you deal and how do you communicate with your executive leaders. And then just before fixing the date, I told you that, okay, let's just have an improvised episode, don't think about it too much. And that's like really what I like to do here in the Product.Live. Like we go unscripted, we just see where the flow
Perfect.
takes us. So yeah, let's start with it. What's this about? How do you deal with your executives?
Well, so I had gone through an experience. I mean, we've all gone through this experience at one point in our lives of dealing with someone that I found to be problematic. That's not to say I was blameless and perfect in the situation and that they didn't find me problematic, but that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
We all have had that executive, that person that we've tried to deal with, that we just can't nail it down. It feels like, if we'd be a good place, we'd be able to do the product right. We'd be able to do discovery and iteration and all the things that we want to do if only this person wasn't so unreasonable. And it took me a long time to realize, oh, wait, it's not just them. There's two sides to this equation. And I wonder what their perspective of me is. And
Yeah.
how do we deal with that? So the talk at Mind the Product was specifically about how to deal with the worst executive you've ever worked with. And the twist being, well, examine yourself as well. So it was four things that I put into it of you have to do the job right. You have to have your priorities right. You have to know what the team should be working on and what they don't need to be working on. You need to
Mm.
have the right people and the right culture with the right permissions and all that and the capabilities. You have to have processes that help you build things and not just do more red tape. And finally, you have to have everyone agreeing to those things. Now, for the longest time, I thought it was those things. And then I realized, oh, you have to have everyone having the same perspective on where the issues are in those and that you're working together towards it. And
Yeah.
that was the basis for the whole talk. And also, I realized it's four things. They all start with the letter P, so therefore it's a model, and
Four
therefore it's a
P's.
talk, right?
Ta-da! We have a framework.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like with these four things and all the details around them, for the first glimpse, you would think that okay, some of these things could be within my hand, but also some other things might not be that much as well. Like if we're talking about having all other people and resources that are needed to do something, for example, or making sure that everyone sees the same perspective at least. Not to mention, the implications for that. So yes, there is stuff that you could do. Make sure that you are very well prepared. You did your homework and everything, but also things that you are not the ultimate controller of. So like, how would you break down the four P's into like things that you could control a little bit more?
I don't know about you, but I've found that in my career, I've rarely been in that much control of anything.
Of course.
There's the illusion of control, but the reality is, in product, there's very little that we own. We work with people who don't report to us, or
Hmm.
we ask people who don't report to us to get things done, and we're just trying to get them moving in the right direction.
Okay.
So control is almost an illusion there sometimes. So it's a lot of how do you facilitate? How do you understand? How do you get yourself in the right position so that other people want to work in the same way that you're asking them to, or that you're trying to herd the cats all in the same direction?
Mhm.
ultimately. So that I think that's really where it comes to. So priorities, you may or may not control that. There's business prioritization and product strategy prioritization. That stuff is often, unless you're the CPO, a lot of that is dictated from above, and that's okay. You get your
Mhm.
O's and you get your KRs, and you can negotiate back on that. But the really important thing is understanding which of the things that we possibly could do are going to affect that, and what is all the other work that's being asked of us or that we may be working on because we think it's important that actually it isn't important, or it's not as important, or it's not important right now. So it's all these things are ways of having better discussions with other people to make sure that you're all agreeing this is what we need to do, this is how we're going to measure success, and if we're not getting there, how are we going to work better together to do it.
Okay, makes sense. But as we say in most of our meetings, let's take a step back.
Yeah,
And
please.
yeah, and again, on the topic of dealing with mean executives or tough executives, whatever, like how would you even define different types of executives? Because I'm sure that even some of these tough executives, that they're not genuinely mean, but they are tough because they are trying to achieve something else, maybe
Yes.
sometimes. And sometimes you have like pure evil executives, and those exist as well. So like in this spectrum, like how would you define different types of them, and what would be the way to communicate with each and every type? Because at the end of the day, you're stuck in this company, you're trying to do something, whether you're having something that is someone that is trying to optimize for something else that you still don't really understand, or someone who is pure evil, you need to find a way to work with them, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. I
let's,
mean,
yeah,
you're
let's
not
break
at this
them down.
job.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're not at this job because you always want to be there. You're not there out of the goodness of your heart, that is. You're not a
exactly,
volunteer. You're there because you're getting paid, and you can get to choose everyone around you that is there as
exactly.
well. So you're thrown in with this group of people that came from a variety of backgrounds, hired by different people, different personality types. It's tough. And I can't answer your question from the perspective of here's three different categories of executive and how to deal with them. Because the
Mhm.
reality is, you're not me. And how I
Yeah,
deal with those three executive types shouldn't be the way that you would deal with them. And you would see them
okay.
differently as well. So we've got, but the fundamental thing is you've got personality dynamics in there. And you hit on a couple of the
Hmm.
things already. So I think the biggest key one is what is their motivation? They're probably most of the time not an
Hmm.
asshole, or at least
Hmm.
they're not an asshole on purpose. What they're doing is they have a different perspective on what's necessary and what's needed to get there. So try to understand what's their bonusable measure. What are they being judged on? What does their boss want? What are they being pushed to do? And what do they believe is the right way to get there? And it's entirely possible this is a term I learned when I moved to England. It took me ages to really understand it. Um, that you're violently agreeing on something, which means
Okay.
you fundamentally agree, but you're arguing about it, and you don't understand that you agree on it. So
Hmm.
sometimes you can get to that point, and it's just personality or bluster or miscommunication rather than a fundamental problem, and that's something you can fix,
Hmm.
usually by changing your language, and
Okay.
making sure that you're communicating in the way that they need. So it's an
Hmm.
understanding of other people's needs in that case. There are times when you've been asked to do something that's fundamentally different than what they need. In which case maybe you can't fix that, and that's okay as well. But you've understood that one stakeholder wants something different than what you're working on, or possibly you've got two different stakeholders coming at you with things that are mutually incompatible, and you are not necessarily in a position of power to do anything about that. You can't resolve that. What you can do, though, is highlight the disagreement and the reason for it, and either bring it to them or bring it to a third party who's above you, above them, and explain there's an issue here. There are forces pushing us in a way that we're going to disagree. That's mutually incompatible. It's not my job to resolve this one, but I can highlight the open issue, and you tell me what you want to do. Because there's still I only have so much throughput. There's only so much that I can do. I'm not going to play politics. I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. You tell me, and I will do whatever somebody in a higher position of authority, someone with a different perspective, higher perspective in the company, can tell me what to do. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And sometimes there are people who are just, we've all seen the reality TV shows where people compete, and sometimes people treat work as a competition, and they're just not very nice. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to pretend that these techniques work for everything. I don't believe I'm the kind of person who deals with that very well. I would not survive very long on one of these game shows, and it may not work in those situations. But I fundamentally believe that most of the time, the person is not being an ass to be an ass. It's just
Yeah.
we don't fully understand, and there are ways that we can try and make it a better situation.
Yeah, it's also another way to practice empathy, right? One of the major skills that a product manager needs to have is empathy, but not just to the customer, but also to your
Yeah.
stakeholders. One of the examples that I really liked, I have never thought about this perspective before that much, is I was recording another episode with Adam Thomas, and he said that you need to understand when you're working with a sales team, for example, that uh, they're always pushing for things to happen right now because they need to close a deal right now to secure a
Mhm.
commission to help them get food for their kids right now, and or this month or something like that. And if that doesn't happen, they don't make commission and
Yep.
they're stuck with not being able to support their families. So like that's why they're being assholes, because there's a lot online. Some of them, like if someone reach the point of being something like that. So practicing like scaling the scope of the empathy that you're doing, not just for your customer but also to stakeholders, definitely will help into fostering a better relationship with them, right?
That reminds me of conversations I've had with two people. Rich Mironov, if you've ever talked to him, has this great bit about dealing with sales and when he goes into startups. If sales is trying to sell something that is a customization of the product, that is a feature beyond what's on the roadmap, he fundamentally believes that sales has the wrong motivation in that case. As you said, as Adam says, they're trying to hit a commission, but the mission of the company, the strategy of the company is to get them to just get that commission and not to hit a commission within the ideal customer profile. So he goes
Yeah.
and rewrites their bonuses and the
Yeah.
bonusable measures and make sure that commission is only based on doing certain types of sales. And that's a
Yeah.
really good way of doing it, so that you're aligning the motivations. They still want to do what they need to do, but they want to do it in a way that is aligned to what you've been asked to do by the CEO, by the rest of the exec team, and
Exactly.
now you're working together. The other one is I had a really great chat the other week with Kate Leto, and Kate was talking about, it wasn't empathy, what was the word, wasn't understanding, and now I've totally lost the word, but it's one of those. And expectations. That's the word. It always
Okay.
happens, doesn't it? And being really clear in your expectations. So a lot of times we walk away from conversations, and we said something and they said something, and what we said and what they said. Well, what we said is not what they heard, and what they meant is not what we heard.
Yeah.
So we each walk away saying, yeah, that went well, when in fact we're still not in alignment, we're still not in agreement. So she talked about how when she works with some executives, one of the key things is at the end of meetings being really explicit and say, this is the expectation that we have, let's write it
Yeah.
down, this is what's going to happen, this specific thing or these specific bullet points. It's essentially OKRs, but in a different way of what is it that we expect to happen as a result of
Micro
this.
format. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really
Mm.
powerful. It's a really good approach to it.
Well, I really liked on the first point that you mentioned that and I think that's one of the beauties of product management is that actually whatever you're doing, the impact could actually be beyond the product that you're doing. So it doesn't have that, we solve this problem by just rolling out the feature that sales are having, but like maybe given the circumstances of our company, we just need to revise the structure of compensation or something like that to make it more fair. And like that's really how beautiful product management is. Like the impact can go anywhere on any level, right?
You did just say
Yeah,
the most dangerous word in technology, though. You use the word just. Just covers so many things.
yeah,
It's never that easy.
yeah. Yes, no, no, no. Of course, which actually takes me to another point that definitely is really related to that. Like now we have all of these terminologies of different functions trying to lead. So like you have product led, you have sales led, marketing led, operations led, anything led, and like it feels like there is a fight of ownership and leadership on who should have the ultimate decision making, or who should be the boss of everything. And like it was funny because one of these conferences I saw that, like, it was the same branding, same everything, but this room was the product led, this room was the marketing led, and this room was the sales led. And I kept imagining, like, if they removed the walls in between, we would have like a very big fight on
I
who should
saw
be
I
leading
saw
what.
I saw Radhika Dutt do a really nice talk last year about exactly that topic, and her point was, forget product led; it's not useful. Let's talk about being vision led, and because
Yeah.
that's really the uniting thing. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I saw I'm going to keep referring to other people because I love listening to other people's smart things. But I was at a Mind the Product did a leadership forum the day before their last conference, and Georgie Smallwood got up and talked about one of the problems that people keep seeing, which is we never have enough time to do discovery. And she was,
Mhm.
I'm not sure if she was CPO or CPTO at this organization, but she had convinced them that discovery was a good thing. She'd gotten the permission and created the space for it. Her teams were doing it. And then that lasted about 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden the executive team was like, why are we wasting time on this? We know what to do and all that. And she realized, oh, I'm talking to people who've got a background in M&A and mergers and acquisition and things like that. So she adjusted her language and started saying, well, we need to do our due
Due
diligence on this.
diligence. Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing as discovery, but they would never do a deal move forward without
Yeah.
doing their due diligence. So now just saying, before we move forward and commit our resources to this, we're going to do due diligence. All of a sudden, so, oh yeah, of course you're going to. That's a necessary step in any
Yeah.
of the process. So they just do their discovery under a different title and adjusting our language to speak. We shouldn't expect everyone else to speak our frameworks. The concepts
Mhm.
are strong. We can be malleable with our language. We should adapt.
Yeah, I think it goes perfectly with what you said about being vision led, or like the way I like to say it is like value led, value driven, impact led. Like, what's the
Yeah.
goal? What's the end goal of whatever we are trying to do? Whether it's a framework or a way of working or building a strategy or whatever. Like, what's the end goal? Why are we doing this? And what are we trying to reach? Which could mean that we just apply just a couple of small tools within very big framework, or actually make some department be leading at this phase because that's what's important for the business, or doing this or doing that, just being obsessed by the vision or the impact that we're trying to achieve, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So also in your talk that you gave, you were talking about how could you be a change agent, and how and maybe in an environment that has some imbalance, and you're not a product leader yet, like you're on IC level, you're working in a startup, or you're working with very like limited, you cannot easily change things and so on, but still there has to be some way where you could, like, apply some change and try to influence upwards somehow. So like, how would you do that?
Oh, yeah, you ask the easy questions, don't you, Omar? Um,
Yeah, of course. It has to be spicy.
so this I was talking about being change agents because I see a lot of people at all levels of product management burning out because they get frustrated by this, and the fundamental reason is we are being asked as product people to be change agents within companies. By
Yeah.
definition, it means there's a product and it doesn't work quite the way we need it to be as successful as we want to be. So we're being asked to add new things to it, to take things away, to fundamentally change, or to launch new things. So that's
Hmm.
change within a company. but often we're also being asked to deliver it faster, better, more efficiently, which is also a change in the way that the company works. And companies, if they've been around for a while, they're very plastic things, but they're very resilient. So you can stretch them and get to a certain point, but very quickly they like to go back to the old ways of doing things unless, they're fully bought in. People
Yeah.
need to see what's in it for them. And you just going in and saying, okay, I've been given this mission, I'm going to blaze forward and move forward. And we all have that vision of, being that pioneer. It only works up to a point. And sometimes you need to blaze your way forward and push past things, but then you need to bring other people along with you. And if you've ever heard the theory of the three personality types in a company of pioneers, settlers, and town planners, you can't always be that pioneer and blazing in. Sometimes you have to bring other people along. You have to eventually scale things up and put in compliance and put in operational efficiencies and all those things. And that's when you're dealing with everyone else and stop signs and infrastructure and utilities, all that kind of stuff. So it's figuring out how do you bring people along, and it is a different personality type, so it's a different, or at least a different mindset. So realize who you're working with, the kind of time frame you're on, how you're going to get other people to do it, and it's the difference between you and your team, you leading a team that does something relatively quickly, to you helping sell a vision and having everyone else rally around it and do their part and bring it alongside. So it's really hard to go from the mindset of let's launch this thing, let's make this massive change, to let's make something 1% better or 2% better here, let's make a minor change to something. But sometimes that minor change is hugely lucrative or absolutely necessary. And you have to think differently about these things. You have to use different techniques and different processes, and just have a different level of patience to get it done. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, Omar. I kind of went off on a tangent slightly.
It touches on it, but I'm not gonna leave you. I'm gonna follow up with questions. So do you see a difference in trying to apply this and follow this? So okay, I'm gonna ask you about different things. So do you see a difference between doing this in early stage startups or hyper growth startups versus established corporations somehow? And the second perspective is also, is there a difference in doing this when you are trying to maintain or scale something that already exists, a product that already exists, and you're optimizing and scaling and all of that, versus if you're trying to push some new vision for a new product development, something that hasn't been done before?
Oh yeah, it's totally different, and this is why I wasn't one of the reasons I probably wasn't giving you such a straight answer on it. When a culture isn't established yet, when you're in an early stage startup, or when everyone can fit around a table or fit in a room, and you're talking to them all the time, it's relatively straightforward. You can move things along. You have a lot more chance to shift things and change direction and change how things work. When you're coming in later on to a company that already has an established perspective, an established culture, an established way of doing things, it's harder. And then when you come into some place that's really established, an enterprise, a legacy company, it's harder again, because people have been there 15, 20 years and they have their ways of doing things. And they've seen people like you come and go any number of times. So you have to work with it's a terrible term, but you have to work with the natives. You have to learn what they want to do, why they do certain things, and what the things are that you can help them with that they'll see as beneficial, rather than see as, oh, this new person coming in, newfangled way. We're successful. We've been around forever. What is it that they know, or why are they going to threaten my job? So how do you make them allies instead of enemies? Yeah, it's totally different in every case. I've seen people really succeed in all of them, and people really fail because they're using an approach that worked at a different stage company or a different personality type company than the one that they're in. So there's that whole OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and then act. But observing and orienting and getting the lay of the land and understanding how to change a system, how to influence a system, how to become part of it, is really critical sometimes.
Okay, and the second perspective that I ask about is whether it's something that already exists or and new product development, and specifically the new product thing. So you're in an organization, with the natives again, and they've been doing the same thing. Everything is set, the environment set, culture set, and everything, and you are trying to come up with something new that might be disruptive, might change the way of the business. That's the vision that you have. But again, always everyone is tied with resources. Like, why should I stop doing this thing that we've always been doing and scaling and try to do something new with you? And what would be the dynamic?
The reality in that one is, if you've got someone sufficiently high up in the structure who cares enough about this and is going to champion it, then you're going to be fine starting something new or changing something. But if
Okay.
not, you're not going to get very far. If you've been there for a long time and you're trying to, and you see a real opportunity, you may have those allies and you may be able to get something, start a pilot and do something and show up with data and show up with evidence and then convince people.
Mhm.
The other side is, people are never going to want to solve a problem that they don't recognize exists. So if
Okay.
they think everything's going fine, they'll be very resistant. But if they see that something isn't working anymore and you're coming with a solution to that, whether it's a new way of doing something or revolutionizing something that they've seen as a problem for years, then there's a potential real opportunity to do it. But so there's that whole statement of never waste a good crisis. And I think that's things tend to change when there's an inflection point, when people see that there's a reason to change. They don't change when things are going really well. You see that time and time again. Companies that have had their market unchallenged or had their business model unchallenged do not react until way too late because they see no reason to.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. So, cool. Then I think there's a lot of, like, what we discussed. It keeps coming back to the same point of how do you communicate with an executive or people that have different perspectives or perceptions. And I think basically it's all revolving around, like, you approach someone with what's in it for them, how this thing could benefit them, whether it's pivoting the roadmap or strategy, or getting something new, shifting our priorities, all of that. Like, always approach someone with what's in it for them. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's an even simpler way sometimes, though, of just asking them. What is it
Yeah.
that you need? What kind of communication do you need? What's working for you? What can I do to make this better for you?
Hmm.
um, can also be really critical. It's not, sometimes it's the substance and sometimes it's the format. Sometimes you have all the stuff, but you're not giving it to them in the way that they need it. So maybe you're
Mm.
expecting them to come to you instead of you pushing the information to them, or they need it to go into a regular meeting or communication pack that they're already consuming. So
Hmm.
it's not always one thing. It's taking the time to understand. And I learned this one from someone. I have a technique I do whenever I go into a company. Over the first couple of weeks, I try and set up informational interviews with lots of people, and I do a very formal stakeholder interview. And I ask them a whole bunch of questions, including what's going well, what's going bad, what's on your what's going to help you make your bonus, things like that, so I can understand all of it. But
Hmm.
I always ask at the end, what else, is there anything I missed? Is there anything else I should have asked you? And
Yeah.
Kit Carrington told me, he said, yeah, ask me how I like to be communicated with. And
Ah.
it was great. It's such a perfect question and such an obvious one. In her particular case, it was, I want mostly WhatsApp, because I'm not really going to look at email. I'll look at Slack sometimes, but if you actually need me, we probably won't talk very often. But if you need me, I want you to talk to me on WhatsApp. That's my preferred method of communication with you. Now, I
Hmm.
was a contractor, I was a consultant on that one, and that made sense. Other companies, it would have been, send it to me in this report, do this, do that. But find out what they need. It's such an easy question, and it's such an easy thing to adapt to, and it'll get you a ton of goodwill.
Of course, of course. Okay, so let me take you to, like, a whole other topic, and
Yeah, please.
yeah, we're improvising, right? So, yeah. So, again, we're talking about communications and dealing with all different stakeholders, executives and non-executives, and I think also a lot of like the conflicts or miscommunication that comes from many people are trying to be defensive because they still don't understand what are the implications of anything new and how that might have like any kind of risk on their jobs and so on, especially if we're talking about functions that are highly operational and product or tech and coming in to increase efficiency and operational excellence and so on, automating stuff. Which takes us to what I wanted to ask about, the new kid in town, AI. And like from a very holistic perspective, and I know like everyone is discussing this to some extent or another, but like since we're improvising and we're discussing basically anything, like I just wanted to get your take on this. Like, how do you see AI as a factor of evolution and change factor in the whole industry of product management, whether product management is being done for purely tech reasons or also implicating other functions like operations, sales, marketing, and so on?
Sure. So I'm gonna go back a few years, and when COVID first hit, a bunch of my
Yeah.
friends were all freaking out, and I had the same conversation with them a bunch of times. They all said, what the hell do I do now? What happened to my roadmap? What happens to my plan? Because it was a massive disruption. Or if Barry O'Reilly uses Clayton Christensen's definition as an acceleration, but disruption, acceleration, massive change, unexpected change in the way that business is being done, right? And I pointed out to all of them, you as the product person in your organization, you're the best placed person in the entire organization to keep your head and deal with this, because navigating uncertainty and figuring out what to do next, that's our toolkit. That's what we do. So go back to the basics, go back to discovery, go back to roadmaps, go back to everything else. Ask, what is it that our customers want? What is it that's changed? What can we do better than anyone else in the market to solve that problem, and figure it out? So AI is a tool, and it's the only difference between it and the tools of the last few years of looking at distributed ledgers and blockchains and things like that is that AI might actually work. And most of the time, at least some of the time, where some of these other ones were tools looking for a problem. And this one actually is something that can help you, but you have to figure out how to use it. So the first thing is, if your boss comes to you and says, what's our AI plan? There's the natural reaction, as you said, to be defensive and just say, for what? But you go back to your actual business goals and say, oh, well, we're trying to do this, this, and this. Actually, some of our tools, some of our approaches may already be using AI. You may be using vendor products. You may have done some things that have it. And you can point to areas where you're already using it. You can point to areas where it's not quite ready in terms of risk. Because you may not want to give your stuff out to third parties and use it, having your data be used as training data, et cetera, unless you've done the due diligence and signed the right deals with the providers. The real thing that comes down to it is, what is the thing that you're trying to do? And I've got I feel like all I'm doing is referencing friends in this one, but I'm going to reference another one. Faith Forster is a VP of product.
You have
at
great
Dext.
friends, man. Like,
So Faith Forster is VP of product at Dext, and she has this great 2x2 of risk versus opportunity. So a place where you've got relatively low risk and the opportunity is well understood. Ship it and learn. Do an A/B test. Figure it out, because the risk is low and you know what you're going to get out of it. And that can be with AI or it can be anything else. But where the risk is higher, or where the opportunity is more ambiguous, you need to be more careful. So there are some areas where the risk is really high, but the opportunity is well understood. It might be really big. You probably want a really careful iterative process. You want stage gates. You want to do not quite waterfall, but don't want to release further without taking a huge amount of governance in the process about what level of risk are we assuming at each point. At other points, you might want to work cross-functionally with lots of teams. But if you can explain to your executives, yeah, there's a real opportunity here, but we need to do this right, and AI may be the hammer that it helps us, or it may be a distraction, but this is how we're going to get there, and we're going to try different things along the way. That's a good way of building the bridge with them.
And that would help, like, define what kind of impact also it brings. One of the things that, of course, everyone is like would always be worried about, especially in the lower levels of an organization, is how people are gonna, like, keep their jobs, or they're not keeping their jobs, and so on and so forth. But I think there's always room of, like, changing and redefining roles, and changing and redefining how the whole ecosystem of some function works. So it doesn't have to be always like, okay, we're gonna automate something, or we're gonna support something with AI, so it's gonna be more efficient. That would automatically mean that we're, like, letting go of half of the people that we have. Maybe, yeah. Sometimes it's reducing headcount and has a good impact, but, like, yeah.
I have yet to see a company say that now that we have more efficient tools, our ambitions are staying the same. Their ambitions always get bigger and bigger.
Exactly.
So yes, we've seen companies say that they're going to outsource all of their customer support to AI, and they usually change their mind just a few weeks later. And what they find is actually, okay, maybe the customer support agents that they have, because as long as their support doesn't requests don't go up, because the agents that they have are suddenly more efficient. If your entire job is just running A/B tests for the color of a button, well, yeah, then your job probably can be replaced pretty easily. But if you have a job where you are helping to create new products, or to change the tactics, to change the strategy, and to achieve more, then ultimately the scale and ambition of your company is just going to keep growing. So there's always a way to add value, but your job is going to change no matter what. And that's the only constant. None of us are doing exactly the same thing we did a few years ago.
Of course. And that's why it's always hard to explain to our parents what do we do exactly, because, like, no one did that. No one did that before at their time. And I think it's also the responsibility of each and everyone to, like, be very aware of how the world is evolving, and making sure that they stay relevant. If someone, like, just expects to remain doing the same thing for the entirety of their life, that they would, like, have real problems growing, on their careers or growing up. So I think people have to be, like, try to channel the fear of being, left out, into actually making sure that you stay relevant and you stay impactful, no matter how things change, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, that was a great perspective for that. So let me swing you again to something totally different again.
Excellent.
Yet again. Okay, so we've been talking about, executives and managing, communication and stakeholder management and AI and how it impacts everything. And the whole discussion is always revolving around, how we're going to make all of this to make sure that we are working on this product, we're scaling it, we're making it grow, and so on and so forth. And I think, like, at least 90% of everyone discussing anything regarding product management is always having this perspective. I don't think there are enough people talking about, what about killing a product, sunsetting something, and, like, having the decision, like, there is always this bias or perception that we have to push for growth, we have to push for scalability, we have to push for this and that. But what if there is a need to, like, say goodbye? So how do you see this, and how do you determine something like that? And how do you actually execute it without losing any kind of opportunity that might arise while sunsetting something?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I've never had to actually kill a product in my career. I've never had to do that. It is a very particular skill set and set approach to things. But making the decision to kill one is a little bit different. And it's understanding what is the opportunity cost around it. The biggest problem we have in this, similar to what we started off talking about today, it's one of perspective. Because we get very tied into, our self-worth gets very tied into the thing that we're working on. So if you're a product manager for X, and you see, say, a $5 million opportunity for it, you think this is it. This is something we absolutely have to do. You also see every single problem and every single way of making this product better, because this is your whole world. What you don't see is the person down the hall virtually or actually down the hall these days, who's got a $50 million opportunity that would take the same level of commitment, the same level of resources to do. And you take it as a personal judgment on you that if the company decides to go for the other person's thing rather than yours, they say, that person is better than you. Why didn't I get this opportunity? And it has nothing to do with you. It's just the product space that you're working on right now. That market hasn't worked for whatever reasons. There is a huge amount of luck involved in this stuff, of being in the right place at the right time. So the most mature thing you can do in some of these cases is to say, actually, we should bin my thing, and me and my team should be working on this other thing, and helping out and working alongside of it. That's the opportunity. That's going to make the difference for us. Or your boss may come to you and tell you that you need to, you and your team being reassigned to something else. And it is really a perspective problem to be able to. It takes a very mature person to be able to stand back and see that and say, yes, I'm going to work on this other thing rather than the thing I had poured my heart and soul into. That I'm to understand where the opportunity really lies. It also takes a really good company and a good boss and a good culture to explain the opportunity in the right way and say, this is why we've made this decision. It is not a personal thing. This is how we're going to reorganize. But most companies, most bosses, most people are just not very good at this. It's not in our nature.
Yeah, as I said, you get easily attached to what you're building and you're trying to grow, that you cannot imagine for a second that the answer is actually doing something else, or sunsetting this and pivoting to another way of doing the whole business. That's why I ask you this question, because I think it's one of the topics that are almost not discussed at all on how to actually do it. Which might leave someone definitely many people don't realize that this would be an option, and if someone realizes that, they would be just freelancing and okay, I'm gonna figure out how to do this because no one is talking enough about it.
This is one of those things that we have the tools for. If you go and look at Teresa Torres's opportunity solutions tree, or Martin Erickson's talking about the decision stack that uses very much the same approach. You can see where are things actually going? What is the vision? What is the opportunity? And if you have the ability to talk to people further up the company, if you're not in leadership yourself, if you have the opportunity to talk to people higher up the company and make sure that what you're working on is aligned to what the company actually needs at that point, then you'll be in much better shape. And if you show the flexibility to say, what we're doing right now is something that should be a priority. Maybe we should put it into a stasis, where we're only going to do critical updates and it's absolutely fine. Or maybe it's time for us to actually retire. And if you look at, we can make fun of Google all we want. They've done lots of things well and lots of things badly. But if you look at the sheer number of things that they've killed, or Amazon or others, there's a reason. It's because, some of these are really good products, but they're just not good enough, or they're not critical to plans right now, and it's time to move on.
Exactly. The example of Google specifically, because Google, a lot of the things that they publish and then they sunset, some of them get heavily promoted. So I remember a lot of them, like Google Wave and the glasses, and there's a lot of them. And it's a really important side of the business. Which ties to, I really like the word that you said, navigating uncertainty. That's a big part of our job, because also that's one of the things that I really like to think about when someone asks me about how to define the job itself and what is the true essence of what we're doing. So that's a part of it. And my childish brain always imagines sailing in a boat, and how in the old games like Age of Empires and so on, you have a black map and then you're exploring a little bit here and there. So that's always how I think about product management, navigating the uncertainty part, and making sure, as you said, we always have a lot of frameworks and a lot of tools. The important thing is to know the value and know the goal of what this framework or what this tool is trying to achieve, and then start combining those together to be able to achieve what you want to do. But on the other side, if you get really obsessed by just trying to apply a process as it was defined, and that's it, you might miss the point of why are we doing this. Like, like in the whole agile methodology thing and the scrum practices and so on, if you get really obsessed about this, you will miss the point.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm almost out of like the crazy unconnected questions, but I wanted to ask you, like, because you have like an extensive experience, long-term experience, and so on, and like everyone, and I know that you're always vocal with public speaking and your own podcast and everything, so like you get the chance to discuss topics that are near and dear to your heart. But if you would like say that, what is the one or two things that you want to go beside your name? Like, these are the things that Randy is evangelizing and trying to communicate to everyone about this kind of career. Like, what's your message to the world?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's one I've been working on a lot lately because I think I was really bad at this for a long time, and I actually started working with someone who's good at messaging recently, and she explained why so many of us are bad at this. She had a great line, which is, "It's really hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle." So I've been trying to
Interesting.
refine this. The short version and the long version. The short version is I help get teams unstuck. I help people to supercharge their results. I help make them and their teams better. Period. That's
Okay.
that's what I want to be known for. I do it as a coach. I do it as a trainer and facilitator. I do it as a community builder. But the longer answer is, when I first started my career, I was actually a music journalist. I wrote about music for about 10 years,
Ooh,
and I'm a good writer. I wrote a book and I blog, and I'm a good writer. I'm not a great
yeah.
writer, but I was a really good editor.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed it. And the thing that made me good at it was I was able to take, and I worked mostly on websites. So I was able to work with designers and developers and other editors and all my writers and help them create something that had a similar tone, that met the needs of our customers, that delighted our readers, and it helped them at scale. And it was putting everything together. And when I decided I wanted to get out of that career and change what I did, I found ultimately I went into interactive producing and then product management, and now consulting product management. I do the same thing. I work with a whole group of people. I help them get better at what they do. If they're working on something together, I help them see the same vision and work better together. I help create something cohesive that's better than the sum of the parts. I'm still an editor at heart. It's
Hmm.
still the same way I see it, but it's a slightly different thing. I try and make sure that everyone understands what is it that's this 4 P's model that I talked about at Mind the Product, and that I have a canvas on my site about. It's my mental model of when people are complaining about how things are not going well. I say, well, first, does everyone need to know? Does everyone know what they should be working on? Are we working on the right things? Then do we have the right people, the right capabilities and culture? Then do we have processes that help us? And then fundamentally, do we and our partners internally and externally, do we all understand what it is we're trying to do, or are we all trying to do it together? Do we all believe that that the same things are priorities and that we're working on them in the most efficient way, the best way? And if that's the case, then it's going to go great, and problems will magically solve themselves. But usually, it's an environmental problem more than anything else. And if it's a strategy
Yeah.
problem, then fine. We have different tools. I can work with you on that. But I find that usually I'm going into places where other people are subject matter experts. They probably know the answers or have a way of getting there. Sometimes they need to be facilitated, but it's getting them to work well together. And if I can get more teams working better, then I will have a lot more success than leading any one team. So that's
Yeah.
ultimately what I'm trying to get towards.
That's actually inspiring, man.
Oh, thank you.
It's all about the people at the end, and how the people interact with each other and how they support each other. And yeah, well, I think that is like a great note to close on. I just wanted to like, if you think about it, like, although I might have been asking you these questions that seemingly not really connected to each other, but again, like if you really think about it, they are connected to each other because, like, how do you align your team, how do you build the culture, how do you build the whole workplace, and how to make sure that whatever you're working on is like really having this impact of benefit on everyone, even if the future doesn't really look promising, even if people are scared from what the future holds with AI and everything and so on. But being able to find new opportunities and push people to redefine themselves and find these opportunities within themselves will eventually lead to this kind of environment and workplace that is highly collaborative, that is based on trust, built on trust, and that would, like, eventually make this place like bulletproof somehow. They could scale to anything, they could deal with anything, and they could definitely navigate any kind of uncertainty.
Yeah, that's the goal. Create a place that you want to work in, and that's got resilience. It's got every chance of success, and that's the dream. So if you want help doing it, give me a call. My website is outofowls.com. Otherwise,
Yeah,
call Omar because he's great too.
thank you so much. I like when things come together at the end. Like, it was all improvised, but I think we were able to connect some collective value at the very end. Randy, again, thank you so much for making the time to have this discussion. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much, like, for the zillionth time, for getting me hooked to podcasts, because I really like what I'm doing. I'm still finding my way, I'm still learning, but I really like what I'm doing here. So thank you so much for giving me the first you know
Oh,
the
thanks for coming
first
to us with a great topic.
chance
We
for
really
this.
enjoyed our chat with you, and thank you again for inviting me
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, of course. So please check out Randy's website, check out the work that he does, and check out the talks that he gives in different conferences. This guy is really brilliant. You would learn a lot from him. And as he said, if you really need to transform your organization and making your people work better together, don't hesitate to reach out to him. Please
Thanks again.
subscribe to the YouTube channel, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you have any suggestions to topics that we should pick or guests that we should host, please leave that in the comments and stay tuned to the Product Live.